Hey everyone, this is BT, and we are all very excited to be going inside this episode. Do everything with boldness. David's even got more stories. You're going to want to check these out. Let's go inside. Trying to change up my intros a little bit. What do you think?
It's pretty good.
Not too shabby. Yeah. Well, that's bold. That's what this entire episode was all about. Absolutely loved. Connor's bold.
So we'll
Connor's
put Connor
bold.
in
We'll
the
put him
middle.
right smack in the center.
There we
So
go. Bold.
I loved this episode merely because you told a lot of stories, and you told the story again of your first Tony Robbins seminar. So let's talk about that for a minute, because you had mentioned that, and you'd never said this before, or if you did, I didn't catch it. You talked about when he was up there doing his thing, you had that moment where you're like, hey, that might be something I want to do. Mm-hmm. And then there was that little flicker of doubt, like you went into the how in that briefest of moments, kind of like a default, and that justification sort of kicked in. So, you were still on the truck at the time, so you were just sort of entering the study and you were learning this thing. So I guess what I'd like to know is when you did have that moment and started to go into the how, what was that like, and what enabled you to kind of get beyond that and say, you know what, maybe not today I can do this, but eventually I will? I mean, we're digging deep in the archive here.
Well, I don't know that I ever got there.
Okay.
I don't know that I ever got there. I really, it's very interesting, because I remember having that thought when I was sitting there when he first came out on stage. It was very exciting. It was a very out-of-body experience. And not so much because it was Tony, but because of the environment that he created, right? I mean, all those positive people, music's going, like he really created and even more so in the early 90s than today. Like in the early 90s, most people didn't experience, like you have to go to a rock concert to experience anything like that. Now sports games, like everything's kind of like that. So it was a little bit different to be in that environment with all that energy going on. It was not something that I had really experienced outside of like a music concert,
sure.
Right? And it did. It flashed in my mind, and it flashed out that fast. And I don't think I ever really thought about it over the entire period of 7 years that I was studying. I wasn't studying to do this. I was studying to figure myself out, to figure life out, I wanted answers. That's, like I said in the podcast, that's really what I was looking for.
Yeah, it wasn't the end game. You weren't thinking I'm going to be Tony Robbins. Like you just wanted to work on yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've said in podcasts before, like I had been thinking about all different kinds of businesses to start. I was not thinking about this.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I started to get closer to that thought, I think, after I met Proctor. But not even so much then, because I was very intrigued by what Bob knew. Like his depth of understanding was beyond anything that I experienced, even with Tony. Like Tony had a depth, but most of it was around NLP. Bob really understood the spiritual, the business, the whole, like everything. And he could go deep, like really freaking deep, which I loved because, I like the intellect stuff, right? So, It was literally, if I get this right, let me make sure I get this right for posterity. I had an experience the year before I started the business where I woke up at 2:20 in the morning with a voice in my head that said, if you want to live your dream, you have to leave. And I was stuck. I was stuck with that fucking voice. Every morning, Brandon, every fucking morning I'd wake up, 2:20, I'd wake up and I'd see the clock, 2:20, 2:20, 2:20. And I'm like, I feel like I'm haunted. And I was in this practice that I had actually gotten from Bob. And the practice was, if there's something that is going on in your life that you're seeking an answer to, he would say, go to your bookshelf, just pick any book, close your eyes, pick a book, open it up, point to a sentence and see what it says. Because our unconscious mind will, if we give it a chance, it'll help us get to the answer, right? But here's the experience I'm having, because I'll never forget this. I'm picking up books that are basically, and I'm pointing to sentences, are basically giving me a warning, right? So I remember picking the Bible up one time, and I point to it, and it's like, damn to the soul, or warning to the soul that disobeys God's voice, or whatever. I'm like, fuck, because I'm trying to figure out what is it do I have to leave, and what's my dream,
Sure.
right? I don't know the answer to those two questions. So 6 months into it, I don't tell Proctor about this at all. 6 months into it, I pick him up, I call him on the phone. He's at home, he's in Toronto. And I'm like, hey, I need to talk to you about something. He's like, I can't talk right now. I'm getting ready to get on a plane. I got to speak in New Orleans. He said, if you want to talk to me, come down to New Orleans. And I'm like, what the fuck? Come down to New Orleans. And I tell this story like it's crazy. We had just gotten back from being on the road, and now I had to go down to New Orleans, which meant charging a card again, explaining to my ex, this is where I got to go, blah, blah, blah. And I made up some stupid ass story, like, I'm going to go down there and help Bob, because I just came home the day before, right? So I go down, wait around all day. He comes up to me and he's laughing at me. He's like, so what the hell was so important you had to come all the way down to New Orleans to ask me? And I'm sweating over this. Like this is just eating me alive, right? I mean, my life is on this. I'm really trying to figure this out. And he starts hitting me with these questions. So I'm not going to get into that whole part. But the thing was that he basically got me to look at what the fear was as to why I wasn't getting the answer. And the fear was, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, I'm calling bullshit. He's like, you may not have the conscious answer, but you're stopping yourself from getting the answer. He's like, your higher self knows what it is, right? But you got to take action. He said, there's no reason for you to know what you're going to do. You're still working for the other company. And I'm like, fuck you, fuck you. Like I'm not quitting. I'm just not quitting, right? So I went home. 6 more months I tortured myself for trying to figure this out. And then I got to the point where I realized I'm not going to get the answer. The only way I'm going to know if this works is if I quit. Meaning, so when I say what works, let me preface that you make the decision first, then you get revealed the answer. And that's what he had been teaching me. And this was the rubber meets the road situation, right? I had done it in a lot of different things. I had what I thought were coincidental, realizations or answers or whatever. They were all right. I didn't have any reference point that this didn't work. But here I'm going to do is I'm going to walk into this company that gave me my break and allowed me to advance for 7 years and buy a house and take care of my kids and get out of debt and save money. And, I had a career here for the rest of my life if I wanted it. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to say I'm leaving, right? And I just got promoted to expand the company across the country, right? I already started. I already moved it out of Chicago. I moved it to Rockford. Like we developed the whole thing there. And I'm going to say I quit. So I realized I was never going to figure out what it was until I let the other thing go. So I let it go. And I did it in a way where I needed to know if there was a spiritual, intellectual process to this that would show up in the worst scenario, meaning that would I get an answer? Would I get clarity because I made this decision? My fear was that I would not. So I left. 30 days after I left, the opportunity became available for me to step in and actually teach a seminar and turn that into a business, right? Now, it did come from Bob, but he didn't know that I left because I didn't tell him. So the only person that knew was me and my wife, right? And my next door neighbor knew, but that was it. Nobody else knew what I had done. So because I really wanted to see if this is going to come, it can't come through any kind of manipulation on my part. It needs to be an honest, I wanted a real test of this. And that's where it showed up. And then I was like, okay, that's what it is, right? And I remember having a conversation with him because I was kind of like, well, I don't know if this is really what it is. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? You got to get hit in the head with a sledgehammer? He's like, you've been preparing for this for 7 years. And my problem was I didn't think that that's what I was doing. I didn't realize that the thing that I was fascinated about the most was my gift. I didn't know that was my gift. I somehow blocked that out in the teaching. I didn't realize it was my gift. And he's like, you're ready. You've been diving into this with everything for 7 fucking years. He's like, you don't get this kind of education in university. He's like, you're ready, right? So that was it.
That's crazy.
That was it.
Yeah, it's just insane because, you can see people's body language change from excitement to fear when you challenge them at your events that they need to let go of that thing. They think it's the security of the thing that they're letting go of, but the truth is there's no security in anything. It's false. But when you have that, they're willing to do anything up until the moment where you tell them to let go of something that they feel like they need to have. Yeah. I think it's refreshing to hear you say, I went and had that conversation with Bob, and I still trudged along for another 6 months. It was probably another 6 months of growth and things you needed to know. And then the hard part for many people, I believe, is that the decision has to happen first. And they hear it from you all the time, but they don't realize how challenging that can be for them when they really have to make a decision. Because I've heard people, and this has happened in our own lives as well, you make a decision you're going to leave on such and such date, and before that date arrives, your boss tells you how good of a job you're doing. You get a raise. All these other things start to show up. It's like freaking clockwork. It's so amazing. But if you're steadfast in that, you realize that the opportunity, you're going to let that go. It's going to be so much better on the other side of it. But it's so people hold on to it like it's the last thing they'll ever
100%. So maybe people didn't recognize what I said. The same year I was struggling with this was the same year I got the promotion expanded across the country, which I talked them into. Right. I had been trying to talk them into this for a few years, and they finally said yes. At the same time I get this message. Now I'm confused, right?
Sure.
And I'm thinking to myself, this is the thing, right? That, like, I got this promotion. This is an opportunity. And here's something that's interesting. I remember when I got this opportunity, the owner of the company called me in the office, and he said, "We're going to let you try this." And I'm like, cool. And he's like, "But I need you to know something." He's like, "There's not going to be any more money." And I'm like,
the ceiling was hit.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it. And at that point, I'm in a bit of denial. Now, I know this guy. I know what he's like. I've worked with him for 7 years. I know where he could be a pain in the ass, and I know what he would do and he would not do. And I remember that when I got promoted the last time, even though he promised me a raise increase, I had to fight for it to actually get him to put it in a check. So when he told me that, I should have believed him, right? But I convinced myself, let me show him I can do this, and then I can justify the raise, right? So I was like, I'll show you first. You don't have to give me, I'm not entitled, right? I'll show you I can do it, and then I'll get a raise. What I have not told very often was that he sabotaged it from the beginning, right? And I think I've told you that story.
Yeah.
It was, Chicago's a union town. Well, we moved out of a union town, but he wouldn't lower the prices to be competitive in another town, but he gave me permission to do it. He knew that we needed to do that, and then he refused after I got out there. So I got a ton of business that was then pulling back because we would not renegotiate the prices. We got the business. The deal was, if I don't remember exact number, if I get so many companies that say yes, and we start delivering to them from Chicago, which was an 85-mile drive, by the way, to go deliver this fuel, then we could justify putting trucks out in Rockford, right? So I go out there and get the business. And he's like, okay, we'll do it. But they were also supposed to lower the fucking price. The people that gave me the business, they understood that they had to pay that price until I moved the trucks out there. And I told them, I said, listen, I want to move out here. I want to create a terminal out here where I'm able to serve you guys. I want to go into Iowa and keep going west. I said, but I'm dealing with union drivers right now. You have to allow me to get out here where I can get non-union work so that we can compete for the price. The real win there, and I know I'm getting off track, but the real win was our delivery service was superior. Like, we had superior equipment, enough people to do it. We were 24 hours, 7 days a week. We could deal with anything. So they didn't have that there, right? So they loved us from that aspect. But when we got out there and we wouldn't drop the price, it was too significant. There was too much of a spread where they actually saved more money with inferior delivery. Than paying that price.
Well, it probably made it easier for you to leave then. Like when that started.
Totally. I realized I'm not going to get it.
Yeah, you're not going to get to where you needed to go. And I think it's right on track because.
And they did get pissed. People were leaving. I'm like, I can't control it. You won't drop the price. Well, our service is superior. I'm like, you don't charge that because our service is superior. You charge that because you've got union guys that are making $25 an hour, right? And now they make even more than that. But back then, that was huge money.
Yeah,
for them guys.
The beauty of going into business for yourself there. Like you get to dictate all those sorts of terms, and you were able to get to a place where I'm going to let this go. And when you did, like you said, within 30 days, you were putting on your own seminar. And Bob did not know about that you had left that particular position. So
no, he didn't know. Well, 30 days I got the opportunity. So that's right at like probably about August. October was when I went for the training. When I came home from the training, that's when I started. So I think I did my first seminar in December of 99. I think that's when it was, December of 99. And
I'm always fascinated by Bob wouldn't answer your question on the phone. He made you fly down to New Orleans and you did it. So many people like, where do you stop? That's a big question we ask a lot of our clients. Where do you stop? That could have been your where do you stop moment. And you said, I'll just catch you next time, and then mired for who knows how long after that. So everything happens for a reason, but it's just.
Well, we had a deal.
Yeah, that's true.
The deal was, I'll coach you if you do what I tell you to do. But the moment you start telling me you're not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. And his philosophy behind it was, if you can't follow me past being uncomfortable, you're never going to get there. And he's 100% right. I didn't know that 100% at the time, but I thought, I need to follow somebody and I knew that, I mean, I had been to the guy's house many times. I knew that he was as successful as he was. I mean, I followed him all over the place in seminars, tens of thousands, 20,000 people. It was not an illusion. The guy was what he said he was, so why wouldn't I listen to him?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I listen?
True. Absolutely.
I can tell you this, hadn't I would never be where I am.
Right.
If I just said, no, fuck off, I'm not spending $3,000 to come down or whatever it cost me at the time, $1,500. I'm not doing it because I was down there for 2 days. I ended up being down there for the weekend.
Well, and this industry is riddled with people that said they wouldn't do a certain thing and they stopped and then they
That's it. Where are they today?
Right.
You don't even hear
Exactly.
from them. They're
Exactly.
ghosts in the wind.
Yeah, it's
they're
true.
They're gone.
Let's talk a little bit about confidence. Take us back to those early years. You had mentioned in the episode, and you just kind of briefly touched on it there. You had to hustle to pull off those first seminars you were doing. You really had to. You filled them, you facilitated them, and then you moved on to the next one.
Yeah.
You're a confident guy now. What was it like back then when you were doing your very first seminars? I assume that 7 years of study had you fairly confident on the intellectual level, but you're getting up in, like you said, 12-hour days, 3 days a pop. What was the confidence level like back then?
So this is a true story. This was my very first seminar. This is the only seminar that this happened at, but it took me those 3 days to actually find out what I knew, right? To be forced to be in that situation, to respond to questions, to teach, to get the rhythm, and all of a sudden this information started coming out in a very comprehensible way, a way that people could understand. I had a gift for conceptualizing things, but I didn't know that, right? So I didn't know that it would be as good as it actually was. So what I did was I had 3 days. I had everything marked down, what I was going to teach. I think we took a break every 90 minutes or so. On the 90-minute mark, when we would take a break, I would go in the green room where I had a television with videos of Bob teaching certain things that I had not mastered yet. So I would watch him break it down. And then I had it fresh in my mind, and then I would go back out and I would do it. And the thing was that I think maybe after the second day, I dropped the videos because I realized I knew it, but I had to get past the fear, the apprehension of if I fuck this up. And all of a sudden, this flow came over me, which was very comfortable, right? And by the third day, it was like, I'm very comfortable doing this. And then it just progressively got better. And I never really experienced any stage fright, never really apprehensive about it. And of course, it just kept getting better. Like I did it a lot. I mean, well, like if you look at our schedule, how much I teach, right? It's constant.
Right.
So you get good at it. You internalize it to the point where it's almost like a person who learns a musical instrument. You can get an idea and just start playing it, right? So because all the information's in you, it's hardwired. So I think it's kind of the same thing.
Well, yeah, and you feel your way through a room. Like it's amazing to see.
Yeah.
As someone who cut their teeth in logistics in this company early on, it used to drive me crazy because if it's on the agenda, shit's going down, right? You can take what's on the agenda, completely blow it up, because that person right there needs it the most. And everybody in the room is benefiting that. So the first time it happened, I was like, well, that wasn't on the schedule. Like my over-controlled brain kicked in. After the fact, I'm looking and watching how you're able to navigate that. Like you go in prepared, but you also go in wide open. Like you talk about like downloads, people talk about like downloads. You're downloading information from the people in that room and you hit them where they're at every single time. I think it's amazing. Yeah. And I love that you say you were basically at halftime of the big game, you're going in and you're watching tape to improve your performance in the second half. Yeah. The great ones do that. Not a lot of people do that. You're doing that and you're going out and you're practicing it. I'd never heard you say that before. That is freaking amazing.
VHS tape.
VHS tape.
I brought my own little television.
That is crazy.
True story.
Oh man, I love that. I love that story. That's worth the price of admission right there in this Inside the Episode.
I'm pretty sure, I think, if I remember right, Ashley was at that first seminar. Ashley would have been, that's my oldest daughter for the users that don't know that. So she would have been like, so she was born in 86, so she'd have been 13, 14.
Sure.
Yeah, she'd have been She'd have been about 14 years old at the time, 14 or 13 going on 14. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, I've got some pictures somewhere of that event. I think she was there. I think my ex-wife was there, and I think Ashley was there helping. My son was still too young yet. But I think she was there helping, handing out books or something like that.
Well, I mean, from me, I had two kids who grew up at events and running registration with me and helping out with collateral drops and things like that. They didn't do too much in the room, but they were always there. I think it's really powerful to see that and look back on it. And I'm sure Ashley remembers those moments of watching Dad do his thing up in front. That's pretty cool. One of the things, getting back to Bob a little bit, you said he told you this quote just hit me. You've got to be all in everywhere.
Yeah.
Not just in this one spot, but everywhere. When you say you're all in, it has to be all encompassing. So this can mean so many things. And oftentimes it means doing the little things like watching tape and figuring out what you're going to do in the afternoon and learning on the fly. Can you share how that all in mentality impacted your development in the early stages of your career?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I needed to do was, my business was coming from speaking engagements, which I needed to get. And I had never gotten speaking engagements before, let alone done any speaking. Right. So he was teaching me. I remember we went to some speaking engagement. He was teaching me how to enter a room, and he was saying, "This is how you enter a room. You need to have confidence, and you need to walk in a room where people will turn their heads and be like, 'Who the fuck is that? I don't know who that is. That's somebody, but I'm not sure.'" And he was telling me about presence, and he was saying that you need to be all in psychologically. If your mind is worried about something, or you're thinking about your kids or whatever, you're not going to enter that room. You will not be seen. You will look like the other 5,000 people that are there, and that's the last thing that you want. He said also, you don't want to hang around like a bystander when you go in. You go in with a purpose, you get that purpose done, and you leave. I remember him saying, like, you want people to be like, "Who was that masked man?" Right? That the kind
international man of mystery just dips in and dips out.
Yeah, exactly. You want to create that in the situation. Too much exposure is no good, because it's like familiarity breeds contempt, right? So there's the specialness is gone, and it's important that you have that, because it needs to be respected, and you need to be someone of value. People need to perceive value. If they don't perceive any value, if they perceive you just like them, the mind compartmentalizes that. Well, they're just like me. I don't have any value. This person doesn't have any value. So there's ways to do it where you increase the perception how you're doing it, and that's where the boldness comes in. So, everything, it's interesting if you watch people in a social environment, like say you're at a restaurant, people won't necessarily want to say that their steak's not done right, or their fish is not done right, or something doesn't taste good, or there's a spot on their fork, or they're like, "I'll just deal with it." A bold person doesn't do that. They boldly ask for what they want. Would you please have the chef cook this steak over, or give me a new steak, or make it more or season it different, or whatever. And very confidently, but not in a way where you're disrespectful. You know what I mean?
Right.
But a bold person will always stand up and ask for what they want. If they see that there's something going on that's not good, or there's drama, they'll step in and change the situation, whatever it might be. And that's what he was kind of teaching me at the time. So it allowed me to step into situations that I was unknown, 100% unknown, and get speaking gigs just like that. I was getting them everywhere, all the time. And then within a year or two, people were calling me. Right? That's pretty much unheard of in the day. I mean, people worked lifetimes to get reputations, and my phone was ringing off the hook for me to come speak. So that was a huge benefit, because that's where all of my leads were coming from, to fill my own seminars, to fill Bob's seminars, to do sales, everything. And then the other thing was to boldly align with the people that make decisions. Instead of dicking around looking for somebody you could talk to because you don't want to go to the person of authority, you go straight to the person of authority and act like you belong there, right? And that opened, I can't tell you how many doors for me.
Yeah, it's boldness. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, and it's a muscle. I would assume it's a muscle. I mean, it's something that's worked.
It is. Once you do it, so really what it is that it's confidence.
Right.
Bold comes in when you really don't have the confidence, but you're acting like you have the confidence. So you're increasing the courage in yourself, and you're saying, here's how this person's supposed to act in this situation, damn it. Act that way. And that's you teach yourself, right? And then it becomes part of who you are. So
it's just natural. You
It's
just do it. The
natural.
more you do it, it just becomes natural. Yeah. Well, in the episode, you shared your airport story again. For
Yeah.
those of you who have been around the podcast from the beginning, I'm going to call back episode 22, The Power of Visualization, because you told that story in depth again about how you manifest this flight in the most horrific of winter conditions
Yeah.
to get home, giving up, talk about bold, giving up a guaranteed flight to possibly get this earlier one, and there you end up getting it. So
Right.
your mindset won out in that case, as it usually does, since I've been around you a long time. And that bold assuredness got you the result you ultimately desired. Generally speaking, how can a person be bold today? What can they do, generally speaking, to start moving that train in the right direction?
So first of all, I think that in order for a person to make that change in the way that they're behaving, it all goes back down to you really have to want what you say you want, because it's a big change. And when you're not 100% confident, you always have this thing going on in your mind, like, am I making a fool out of myself? Am I just being an asshole right now? You're uncertain in the time. So there's a risk that you're taking. It's an unknown risk that a lot of people know, but it's still unknown to you. So the idea is, do you really want this? If you really want it, go for it. Completely, balls to the wall. And if you screw it up, do it again. Figure out, I went over the line, but you don't know where the line is, so you go over it anyway. So you're like, okay, I went over a little bit over the line there. I need to pull it back just a little bit. It was pretty good, but a little too much. So you learn where that is. A person has to want what they say they want. Then they have to ask themselves, how does a supremely confident person show up in this? So if I'm making decisions based on it's going to cost me money, it's going to cost me time, how am I going to show up as a person? Am I all in, or am I playing it safe? Am I playing not to lose in this situation? Because if I do that, I'm not bold, I'm timid. I'm fear. There's fear in making the decision. It's like all in. Go all in, and if you're wrong, fix it, okay? But if you're not wrong, you just figured out how to grow. You figured out where to grow. If you don't constantly push things in a bold direction, you stop growing. You always have to go past what's comfortable in order to get the reward, right? And sometimes you go too far. It's not like anybody's getting hurt because you went too far. You just realize I can't go that far. I can't go that far that way.
Reset.
You reset and do it again.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love like you ended this episode basically saying, and you just said it again, play to win, don't play not to lose.
Right, 100%.
I think that is that personifies boldness and what it takes to be a bold individual. So
yeah,
I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, this was an awesome episode, chock-a-block full of stories.
Right on.
Go back and listen to it again. Thanks for coming inside.
Yeah,
David.
thanks, Connor. Thanks for joining us on this one with your
It's
boldness.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, are you feeling more bold? I know I am. Thanks for coming inside. Be sure to ring that bell and leave us a comment down below and let us know what you're doing today to be more bold. We'll see you on the next episode.